I've been watching the keynotes. I always thought I was coming to an Agile conference and it'll all be jeans and t-shirts, but oh no, the keynotes have been in ties, no ties, shirts, dress jackets, so I thought I'd better do something. Fancy dress as well. So what I did, right, I went back to my fancy dress, and this is it. So I've just kind of made it a bit more 1980s. I'm ready for my Spandau Ballet audition, even as we speak. So the other thing that I noticed from watching the keynotes is there's a lot of overlap. And now it's not a conspiracy. We don't plan these things. We don't all decide to talk about the same topic. But what happens is there's clearly a zeitgeist. There's clearly some important topics that we think are important. And you will be spotting the relationships between all the talks. So they're the things that are important to you, because you'll be observing the world through your own belief systems and picking up the things that are most important. So whilst we think we're saying things that are important, you'll be seeing overlaps, and that makes them even more important to you. And I'm going to start with Warren Zevon, because Warren Zevon sings songs that are important to me. And he comes through my MP3 player or my Sonos or my radio. I have to stop and listen, because he has songs with words that he thinks are really important. And in the 1982 album Envoy, which is not pictured here, because I have that on vinyl and not on CD, he wrote a song called Ain't That Pretty at All. And that's a song about someone who's particularly jaded and disillusioned. They're working on something, everything feels the same, everything they try works out exactly the same way. And even though we're on projects and we're trying different things, we can get in this loop and feel that particular way. Because a lot of the time, what we want to see happen, what our expectations are, what our ideals are, reality doesn't match. That's not what we find in the real world. So it becomes something that ain't that pretty at all for us. And part of the reason for that is we don't have strategies to cope. Right? We have strategies through our experience. We bring strategies up through our childhood. We learn strategies in different jobs, but they don't always apply to the situation we are in. So when we play those strategies, we don't get the results we want. We don't impact reality the way we want to. So again, we feel disillusioned because nothing's working for us. Now, I've been to Paris. That's where I got this shirt, from a theatre shop that specializes in kind of 16th, 17th, 18th century theatre. I've never been to Rome, but I've been to the Grand Canyon. I was on a bus for about 3 or 4 hours. It felt like 6. And we got out, and everyone else is seeing this wonder of nature, which is good for them. I saw a big hole and some cliffs, and a gift shop, and nothing I wanted to buy. Right? And that's no reflection on the Grand Canyon. That's a reflection on me. That's a reflection on how I was perceiving and interacting with reality at that time. So very often my job is to help people deal with reality as it is, to deal with the situations in front of them, things that they don't find pretty, things that they can't work with. So even though my role is never survival expert, I very often find myself helping testers or testing survive on projects by working with the reality that's in place, by helping them identify how they can add value and becoming a viable part of the system, the project that's in place. That's very often what I find myself doing, regardless of the role or title that I've been given. So who has seen The Princess Bride? Has anyone seen Princess Bride? A lot of people. Excellent. Has anyone read the book? Okay, it's a book before it's a film. This is my copy of the book, 1976. It's not a particularly great cover. It's a cover that obscures the inside. This is full of action and adventure and sword fighting and duels of logic to the death. Right? That's not really what this cover implies. But in this story, our hero Wesley travels off to America to make his fortune so he can come back and marry the love of his life, his one true love, Buttercup, because that's the kind of names we have in this book. And on the way to America, he is caught by pirates. His ship is captured by the dread pirate Roberts, who is famous for taking no prisoners, leaving no one alive. And everyone else is killed, except Wesley, who pleads for his life, saying, Please don't kill me. I will work for you for 5 years. I will be your valet. Just don't kill me. And Dread Pirate Roberts is going, I've never had a valet. We're a pirate ship. We are pirates. We work as pirates. That's what we do. We are pirates. I have no idea what a valet will do for us. I have no idea how a valet will add value to us. I'll probably kill you in the morning. So, Wesley, next morning, is ready for his fate. And he says, thank you for giving me the chance last night to learn so much about piracy and how this boat works. And the Dread Pirate Roberts is going, you've had one night. Right, really, what could you possibly have learned? So Wesley says, well, I was working with the cook. And the cook didn't know the difference between salt and cayenne pepper. And that's why your food's been so hot. But he does now, so it'll be better. And I had to look in your hold, and it was a mess. It was full, it was higgledy, everything was misplaced. So I've tidied up. Now you've got so much room to have more treasure in there. And the Dread Pirate Roberts goes, maybe I'll kill you tomorrow, right? And every day, Wesley is learning more. He's working more. He's trying to add value into this project. He's trying to make himself viable so that he can stay alive. And over time, he gets fitter, he gets stronger, he learns how to sword fight, he learns how to navigate. And eventually he learns the secret. The Dread Pirate Robert tells him, look, the Dread Pirate Roberts is a role. It's not a person. I'm not the Dread Pirate Roberts. I'm a pirate that inherited the title from someone else, who inherited the title from someone else. You, Wesley, have learned enough now to be the next Dread Pirate Roberts. So we're going to change crew, we're going to get a new crew, and you're going to be introduced as the Dread Pirate Roberts. And so Wesley is. So that's good. It's a story of this triumph, except if you're a tester, right? Because this is what the story amplifies. This is what it tells us. Now, there's a signal underneath. Wesley, clearly, has learned how to sword fight. He's on a pirate ship with the Dread Pirate Roberts, who is famous for leaving no one alive. Wesley has been killing people for the last 3 years. He has killed hundreds, if not thousands, of people. That's what this story is telling us. Sorry to disapprove this for everybody. But the next time you read it or watch the film, with that filter in place, with that belief system, you get a different picture. This is what testers do. Testers adopt different belief systems, different filters, so that we are engaging with systems that other people are working with. We see different things. We notice different things. But we can always adapt to the other belief system, the nice one, the one that lets us enjoy it in the same way as normal people, even though we're not. Now, I was looking around to see how testers are given survival tips for Agile. And one of the things that we're taught in certain places is that, well, if we just tell everyone that we're here to make them look good, we'll fit in. Unfortunately, I'm not here to make people look good. I don't deliberately make people look bad. Right? That might happen. My job is to do things that get information, that provide feedback. I can't really be held responsible for the way that people take that feedback and deal with it. They might feel bad based on that, and that's fine. We then have a human relationship thing that we have to deal with. But making people look good is really a side effect of the work that we do. What we're trying to do is the best we can to add value. Like all the keynotes before me raised the bar with their clothing, and I had to step up to that level. That's what we're trying to do on projects. Just keep raising the bar so that people step up, so that we improve it over time and continue to add value. Now, other strategies that you'll be told that I don't use, right? I'm telling you now, I don't use. I don't take people out to lunch. I don't buy donuts. I'm from a Scottish background. There's no way I'm buying donuts. However, I mean, it's always appreciated if that's what you do. So thank you very much for the people at the back, for the glass of wine that we'll use at some point. But if this is part of what you do, if this is how you approach your daily life, if you buy lunch for people, you take them out, then that's great. You can use that. That's not what's adding value onto the team. So when that's the strategy that's presented to people, that's not the strategy that they're going to use that adds value, because they won't approach it congruently. If I brought in donuts, they'd probably sit there all week because people would think they're poisoned. Right? It's not a strategy that I'm going to be able to use effectively. Testers add value by doing stuff related to testing. That's what we do. We find problems, we check the acceptance criteria, we go in deep, we try and make our test coverage and our testing visible to everyone else. That's how we add value. We survive by learning to adapt to the system of development, the way that the system is being developed. Now, we're very good in testing, at learning how to work with the system under development. Lots of our techniques are related to approaching the system that we're building, the application that we're building. We know how to test that. Other processes like waterfall have fairly defined ways in which we should test or engage with our colleagues. And that's supposedly to help us work with the system of development. With Agile, we have to adapt because every system is different. Fortunately, people are good at adapting. Unfortunately, people are good at adapting to pain and learning to live with it, and using the same strategies and just taking the hit and taking the pain and getting more disillusioned over time. That's what we have to learn not to do. We have to learn to adapt in ways that continue to add value. This is a newspaper from 1901 and shows the story of Annie Edson Taylor, who was the first woman to go over the Niagara Falls in a barrel and survive. So I think she was 55 at the time, and she thought this would be her path to wealth, fame, and fortune. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was something she decided she never ever wanted to do again. I survived waterfall projects. That's as good as it's going to get, folks. So I survived waterfall by changing my process. Even though we've got a well-defined process for dealing with a waterfall project, I was looking at what I was doing and removing the waste from it. So I stopped writing huge scripts because they weren't adding value, cut down the details in the test cases, did what I had to do in order to meet the needs of the people that were in there. They would want a test strategy. They would want a test approach. I would give them what they needed, because I needed to know what I was going to do for my testing. They needed to understand what I was going to do for my testing. I needed to communicate that strategy to them. That doesn't mean I needed to write a huge test approach in the format that they wanted. So with Waterfall, we learn how to work around the process and own our process in order to add as much value as humanly possible. We learn how to do exploratory testing around the edges, still documenting what we need to in the test tools they've got, trying to add as much value as possible, even though the process itself is a nightmare. And because of this, I felt I was a bit more ready for Agile projects when they came along. Now, one of the things that has stayed with me for a long time, this is part of a poem by William Blake that he wrote in 1820. Coincidentally, because we find patterns when we observe the world, I encountered this poem when I was between the ages of 18 and 20. And this has kind of stuck to me for a long time. This underpins how I approach process development and test abstractions and how I'm working with systems that are in place. I don't want to have to take on someone else's system and their rules and be enslaved and stuck in that without really understanding what's going on. It's my job to own the process and systems and models that I use and create a reality that I am comfortable with and can engage with. That's what this does for me. Before I worked on Agile projects, I so wanted to get onto Agile projects. This thing was being hyped up brilliantly. Chances are some of the people in this room wrote things that attracted me to Agile projects because of all the collaboration, all the working together, all the actually releasing things into production. What a novelty. Stuff that works. What? This is unheard of. So I wanted to do this. And over the time I'm learning about this, I'm building beliefs about how Agile is going to work. I'm building ideals about how I expect to work on these Agile projects. But I'm ready because I can handle, and if I can handle waterfall, I can handle any of this stuff, right? So the first time I get on an Agile project, uh, in what way is this agile? This is not what I was expecting. This is not what I'm ready for. Right? I'm stuck. I don't have the strategies to cope with this. All right? I'm being asked to write a test strategy. I didn't expect that. I thought we didn't do those things. The stories are not what I was expecting. Right? They're markers for conversation, and we're not having that conversation. And there's no acceptance criteria. So I have no idea what's going on here. I was the worst peer in the world, right? I'm sitting there with the developer, he's got the keyboard, he's coding, and the keyboard comes over to me, and it's a deer in the headlights. The floodlights have just come on the keyboard. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? They had lots of automated tests, and I didn't really know how to get my head around this. I didn't know how I was going to add value in here. And no one was really able to help because they had no idea what a tester was supposed to do in their project or what testing was supposed to add to their project. So, since I know how to adapt to waterfall, I did all the things that I know how to do. Now, this is what I tried to do very early on in my career. This is how I used to work with the world. When I came out of university, I was going to take over the world with computer-aided engineering tools that were going to build code and applications and systems. Now, when we try to take over the world, what we're really saying is, I have a model of the world that I'm going to enforce on everyone else. I'm just going to map my model onto you, you're going to do it. That clearly wasn't going to work here. So what I actually do, right, is I'd start looking at things as systems. My social skills are on the everyone is a system level. So I view people as systems. We work in systems. We have teams that are systems. This is how we work. So this is how I think about things. That's my model of the world and how I engage with it. And for me, it's a useful metaphor. So the software systems, on the team itself, we have multiple systems. People very often create one abstraction of reality when we have many. The pair that's working together is a system. The pair next to them is a system. They may or may not be interoperating. They may have a system together. The developers have a system. The testers have a system. The testers that are working with the developers. The managers up here that are enforcing things down on the developers, onto the team, and the team push things on other parts of the system. We have a huge amount of interactions, inputs, relationships. And this is what I look for. This is how I work with things and understand them. So, given that, I'm able to just take things from scratch again and start looking at what I need to do. Since my Java is not good enough, I need to improve my Java. If I'm on any project, whatever we're working with, if we're doing .NET, I'm going to learn .NET. If we're doing Ruby, I'm going to learn Ruby, because I need to be able to speak to the developers. I need to understand what they're saying. I need to see whether any of their tools have any knock-on effect to me. We're peers on the team. In order for me to understand what they're doing, I need to understand what they're doing. My TDD wasn't very good, so I went away and had to learn TDD before I could pair effectively, because we're still learning Agile. So we're not used to using pairing to bring people up to speed. So I had to bring myself up to speed in order to start adding value. But even then, I found I wasn't adding value on creating production code, but I could add value on creating code that was testing this, reviewing the code that was there because I could understand it better. Now, I didn't really understand the technology, so I had to learn that. But no one really understood the technology from a testing perspective. Right? I had to go and learn the technology to see how I could observe it, because I'd like to observe systems when I'm working with them, because then I have more insight into how they work. I need to be able to manipulate those systems, so I need to find tools that help me manipulate those systems in ways that other people in the project are not. I have to do that research to bring those things in to make the testing work. At simple level, we zoom in and we look at things in more detail and we look back out. And we see that the stories we've played, although they get to done, aren't really done, because we then immediately play another story so the business owner can get what they actually wanted the first time we played the story. So we have to try and figure out how to make that not happen. So we start asking questions about the stories and the acceptance criteria. I can do that. That's what I do as a tester. I ask questions. That's the first thing I do to help add value, and suddenly the stories start getting done without adding in new stories to fix what we did. I do testing things in order to help it. Since no one else knew what testing was supposed to do, I just made it visible. So I didn't write the test strategy they wanted. I made my strategy or notes on how I thought we would test visible in the wiki. When I did testing, when I performed testing and executed manual testing, I put my notes in the same system that the story was recorded in. So we didn't have to have a test documentation system. We just used the same work repository that everyone else was using. I'm looking for tools. If no one knows what your testing is supposed to look like, you get to make it up. Right? That's the secret of consultancy. You get to make stuff up. That's what we do. So normal stuff, you look at risks, yada, yada, yada. Testing, this is pretty much a yada, yada, yada thing. This is what we do. I know how to do certain things. I have strategies. I map them onto places. I look for gaps. I take responsibility for it, fundamentally. I honestly believe that every single tester has an individual test process, and that's the thing we work on and improve. And that's the thing that we can completely take responsibility for, no matter what environment we're in, no matter what is going on. We have responsibility for our approach and our way of approaching it, and then we figure out how to fit that into the other places. Then we figure out, through our communication and pairing, how to teach other people to do this stuff as well. It was all the beliefs and ideals and expectations that I had about Agile that got me stuck. That's because that's not where we are. But when I view it as a system and work towards it and model it normally, then I'm free to work with this thing by looking at... Now, it's still okay to have the ideals, right? The ideals are fine, right? They're things that we can choose to work towards. They're things that we've heard of, have worked in other places. It's not where we are now, but if we know that that's something we might do, we might want to start taking steps towards it. What we have to do are avoid the beliefs that this is what we should be doing and this is what we should be doing now. We need to start working towards these things. Now, I worked on a few Agile projects over time, and I learned that every single project is different. Every Agile project is different. That's partly to be expected, since every Agile project has different people on it. And they've done different experiments at different times and drawn different conclusions from them and taken different actions as a result. Fundamentally, we're making the book up as we go along, and it can be hard then to continue to be viable and add value in this type of organization that is constantly learning. Because we have to constantly learn. We have to keep up to date. We can't rely on all the old strategies that we used to use. We can't rely on going away and writing a whole bunch of things in advance and then doing it. And we learn not to do that over time. But if you haven't started on Agile yet, learn from the start. It's going to be different, and you have to take responsibility for this. Now, I found that all the stuff that had prepared me for Agile is not what I actually drew upon when I was on Agile. I didn't go and consult the Agile books to look at what I should be doing. I went and looked at The Art of War to see how things were going to work. I drew upon my experience of working with people in hypnosis and the feedback loops and the language that we had in order to do that. I looked at the cybernetics stuff that I'd drawn value from to figure out what strategies I needed to have requisite variety within this particular system. These are the things that I drew on. I didn't necessarily tell people that, but we are told that we should borrow from other disciplines. And what we should do is raid them, then steal stuff, loot it, pillage it. Because when you do that, you make it your own. It's now yours. It's not theirs anymore. This is my thing. Right? So you own it. At that point, you have responsibility for the communication of that. You can tell them where you stole it from, but the communication of it, the ownership of it, the interpretation of it is yours. And that's what makes it add value. And by telling people where it came from, they can go and look too. And they will take something different from it. And that will enrich your entire project or your team. So I still have beliefs about Agile. Right? For me, an Agile environment is one that is going to be more flexible. It's going to be one that is more open to change and experimentation. It's going to be one that I want to live in much, much more. But do not call me a QA. Right? I do not like that name, QA. I do not like it, not at all. QA, we do not say. Tester, I do say. It describes me bester. and how I play. So it's far better to say tester, and do not call me a QA. Right. Now, apologies to Dr. Zeus. Now, I've no idea why. Particularly in Agile, people insist on calling people QA. I don't get it. Now, the reason I get concerned about it, it's what Anthony was talking about this morning with identity. I mean, I learned about the identity stuff from general semantics. But it's not so much that I am concerned that when someone calls me a QA, that I'm going to morph into a QA and do QA things. What I'm more concerned is that they have expectations about that. And that by them using that word, they are no longer adopting the roles and responsibilities that relate to a quality assurance process. That's more what I'm concerned about. So I'm flexible about many things. I will make up my own words. Right? I have no problem doing that. But QA, I will fight against. And if you call me a QA, I will say tester. If you say you were doing QA, I will say testing. You find the test manager and you call us the QA team, it will be the test team. If you're in a meeting and you say, will the QA team give us a report, there will be silence. So, I'm not strong on many things, but I'll do that. Now, all the things that I've talked about, that's what helped me survive on Agile projects. So that's what I use to help other people on Agile projects, other testers. So to take a small sample, new people who are completely inexperienced, they might be straight out of university, they've read about Agile, they have pretty high expectations, right? And they come on your project, and you're not doing what they're expecting. But they're vocal. They will tell you, you are not doing Agile, because they have no other strategy. Right? They have no other experience of the world. They don't know how to add value in and out the places. So we have to help them by pairing with them, teaching them that ideals are useful and that they're things that we build towards. And we have to understand that when those people come on our projects, they're going to slow us down a little bit because we're going to have to spend the time teaching them and pairing with them and getting them up to speed. But they will also have an alternative viewpoint that will add value. They will have some possibly more passion than the people that are currently in there and be more vocal about certain things, and you can harness that and use that. I was an experienced tester, new to Agile, but I had done some work so that I wasn't as fixed in my approach. Sometimes organizations decide, we're Agile, and that's it. There's no the testers. Oh, are we? Okay. They don't know what to do. So you got experienced testers who learned to survive in a kind of anti-person environment and now pushed into a test environment. And very often the environment doesn't know how to deal with that. So you've still got the test team over there and you still got the dev team over here. So we have to teach them. We have to help them adapt their strategies. We have to show them that all their techniques are still valid. They just have to learn how to do it a little bit faster. They have to learn how to do it with a little bit less information and ask questions. They have to just change their approach and learn some new strategies. Experienced Agile testers, there shouldn't be a problem. Except, all Agile teams are different. Therefore, they've been in a project maybe for 3 years. They have learned how that team works. They have evolved in that team. They have done experiments and made conclusions and figured out a way of working that this team hasn't. So we have to help them bridge that gap. We have to use their experience and their knowledge, but don't immediately try and map their model of the world onto this one and try and take over this team and say, this is how you do Agile testing because I am experienced and I know how to do this. Fundamentally, what we do are lots of experiments, lots of little experiments. We've all heard failure is a good thing. That's good. If you're doing experiments in order to learn, hopefully you are, and we just learn knowledge. And now if it's you that's responsible for it and it's just an experiment that you're doing, you don't need to ask anyone's permission. You just do it. If it's a team, you might have to agree that you're going to do an experiment and set a time limit on how you're going to do it. But it's important to keep experimenting in order to keep learning, in order to discover new strategies and draw new conclusions, even though you know that you may not be sticking to them. So I think most of this we've probably covered in terms of I really focus in on the tester's attitude. I really try and change a tester's attitude so that they own a lot of this change. And that when they are communicating their needs, as we learned earlier on, that they focus on, I need this because and then give the reasons, give what it's stopping, speak from their personal experience, rather than saying, we need to do this because someone over here said this. We need to tell people what the blockers are and approach things from a, if only we were doing this, then I could. And I've done an experiment that does this, therefore I know that we need to take this step. And I do try and foster an attitude of survival. Not that we're going to kill them, not that we're going to kick them out on the street, just that they have to be evolving and learning and adapting and taking this forward. That's the attitude that we need to have. Now, a lot of this I stole and plundered from Stafford Beer. Stafford Beer was a cybernetician, and he came up with a variant of Ashby's law. So Stafford Beer says, only variety can absorb variety, which he stole and adapted from Ross Ashby. And Ross Ashby said, only variety can destroy variety. So there are slightly different types of cyberneticians. Stafford Beer was dealing more with management, which is probably more applicable to what we do. But this is what people do. This is what systems do. We absorb variety. When we're working as a team and management come up with an unreasonable demand, we absorb it or deflect it or automate that report so that if management don't want to speak to us, we don't have to speak to them, and we just deliver some statistics or numbers that are meaningless and we don't care about. We absorb this stuff. We self-organize in teams. If you've got a team and you put a tester on that is adding no value, they will absorb that by readapting, reorganizing, and leaving that tester to sit in the corner. That's fine. Because people respond with the strategies they have. And the more strategies that you have, the more approaches you have for dealing with variety, dealing with things that are in place. If your only strategy for testing is to look at the story, sit down for 3 days, write out what you think you're going to do, then you can test it. But the story comes immediately and you're not ready for it, you can't test it. We need to have strategies that allow us to cope with things coming fast. We need to have strategies to cope with things that are delayed. We need to have communication strategies that tell people this isn't working because. And when we are communicating things, the notion of amplification and attenuation is important. When we write a defect, if it's important, we want to amplify it. Very often when we're testing, we look at the stuff that people are attenuating away, the risks that people are trying to brush under the carpet, the stuff we're trying to ignore. Those are the things we ask questions about. So for me, this is a model that I use quite a lot. Because the real world is messy. The real world ain't that pretty at all. But by continuing to learn, continuing to add value, this is how I helped myself survive and add value on Agile projects, and how we can help testers and testing survive on Agile projects. So thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. Questions? Any questions? Come on, guys. Questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My wife will be so pleased to know that I brought another pair of shoes.
Some wine from Spain and shoes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.